We're calling in reinforcements. It's the fuzz as we talk about Wolfcop next on Warehouse B. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Today, once again, I got my brother Brad with me. What's going on, man?
Hey, glad to be back.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to talk about a fun one, 2014's Wolf Cop, which I doing a little bit of research. I guess this guy, he won a contest or there was some grant or something, and this movie was made for $1 million, which what they did for $1 million, I was pretty impressed with.
It's really impressive to learn that it was $1 million because it's a pretty fleshed out movie. There's some pretty good scenes. The effects, I thought, were great for what they were, especially after hearing the budget. The whole scene in the garage with the cop car.
Yeah.
That's all done really well. The blood effects and the altars and all that stuff is really great. So the set, a lot of the set dressings are good. So that really surprised me.
Yeah, they didn't skimp it. Every penny of it's up there on the screen.
Yeah.
I guess just real briefly, the plot. We've got this down and out alcoholic cop named Loup-Garou, which if anybody speaks French, Loup-Garou, I guess, is French or French Creole for werewolf. So I thought that was great attention to detail. And he goes out on a call one night, gets hit over the head, and he wakes up the next day with a pentagram and runes and stuff carved in his chest. And he starts acting weird. He's kind of hot on the bar lady, and he goes in to see her one night, and he ends up becoming a werewolf. There's all kinds of corruption in this town. And basically, to make a long story short, he goes out and starts fighting crime and taking out bad guys and learns of this decades-long plot. I guess I'll go ahead and spoil it, for a movie that's 10 years old. Everybody in the town who's like above him, like the chief of police, like the mayor, like his friend, they're actually shapeshifters. They're kind of doppelgangers. And every, 32 years, every cycle, they have to feast on werewolf's blood to keep their powers. And it was basically them that turned him. And that's the basic plot. There's some things I'm kind of glossing over, but no matter how many times I watch this movie, I laugh, even at the same parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's a great mix of really good action, cheesy one-liners, really funny practical effects. It's great for its genre. This type of movie, it's fantastic.
Yeah, kind of self-aware parody. Which me and you were talking off screen. We're both big kind of werewolf fans. I even love like the old Lon Chaney movies. So yeah, big werewolf guy here. The guy who plays Lou, I thought he did a really good job. Very very believable as an alcoholic.
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
Yeah, I mean he's the stereotypical. Even alcohol aside, he's the stereotypical guy you think of as a cop in a small town. He's not too worried about things. And, he's kind of disgruntled about his job, and he's an alcoholic.
Detective work from a bar stool.
Yeah. You add the alcohol in, and you get a heck of a main character.
His friend Willie in this movie is the one that I just absolutely loved. Just his comedic timing and a lot of his one-liners. We'll get to some of those in a minute, but there's a scene where after he becomes a werewolf, he urinates on these kids that are graffitiing this wall. He's like, "Whoo, maybe you need to lay off the asparagus." Then there's another one where he's rip the face off this guy in the meth lab, and we'll talk about that in action. But
Yeah.
he's like, Lou, maybe you should keep a low profile. There's a guy running around without a face. I thought his character, just the timing and everything was great.
Yeah, and he's a believable character. He's a guy who listens to heavy metal and drives around a
Conspiracy theories.
conspiracy theories, drives around a beat up car. And he reminded me of half the stoners that I went to high school with, to be honest with you. I'm
Maybe
like,
that's
I know
why I
this
like
guy.
him so much.
Yeah. It's like I grew up with 3 of these guys in our hometown.
Right? It's an old hat for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, performance-wise, I like both of them. I thought everybody else was okay, very passable. I liked the bar owner. You know, you can't tell at first that she's up to something until she has that hard villain turn before the
Yeah.
third act. But I liked her pretty much, and the partner Tina, who was
Yeah.
employee of the month for like 6 straight years apparently on the plaque.
Those are the four main characters of the movie. The sergeant and the mayor, throw them in. Like you said, they're passable.
Yeah,
There's nothing special, but there's no like glaring weaknesses with those characters either. So yeah, I thought the cast was pretty solid in this
Yeah.
movie. And and then you've got the guy who leads the guys that are cooking meth in the barn.
Oh, the guy who was also the bad guy in Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah, he's a very passable villain. So
Yeah, I like him too because he doesn't have to raise his voice to get things done. I mean,
Yeah.
he does a time or two, but he's very Jake the Snake Roberts when he's talking
Right.
to somebody, down low.
yeah,
So I thought the werewolf transformations in this were pretty good. The main one being in that bar toward the end of the first act, where that was one of the most painful werewolf transformations I've ever seen, where his penis explodes.
yeah. There's some scenes in here that are gory humor, and they're over the top.
Yeah,
Like super over the top. The humor in this movie is just over the top. There's a lot of heavy metal playing in this movie. I looked it up. I can't remember the name of the band, but it's one band.
it's all stoner rock.
Yeah, from Canada. That's stoner rock, very Sabbath sounding, and the soundtrack's killer.
Yeah.
And the whole movie, the pace of it is like a heavy metal. It's very very fast, very action packed. Apart from the first 15 minutes, which I want to talk about later. But
Yeah.
the last 45 minutes is just action packed heavy metal, sequences, and it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And we're talking about effects. I love that scene where Tina picks up his face off the bathroom floor when they're at the crime scene the next morning. Hey, look, I'm Lou. I thought that was pretty passable
Yeah.
for $1 million budget.
Right. Yeah, it's the effects are really cheesy and great. At one point you can see the plastic whenever he's transforming into a werewolf. I think it's towards the end. Maybe they knew it was going to be the last take or whatever, but you can actually see the plastic skin, the human skin ripping, and you can tell that it's plastic.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they don't they're very aware. Like they don't try to hide it at all. They're like, this is what it is. But the werewolf, the costume and the prosthetics for the werewolf, they're great. They're over the top as well, but they're great. Whoever did
Yeah.
those for the budget, they're fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, the transformation scenes are great. I love the one in the jail there, the main scene. You've got Willie, and of course he's a bad guy, so he knows about him being a werewolf. He's tranked him like 2 or 3 times. And they go out and they're fighting crime. There's that scene where they go to Liquor Donuts, which I thought was a hilarious name for a convenience store.
Yeah, Liquor Donuts is a euphemism. It must be a Canadian sexual euphemism because that's clear. Liquor Donuts. I've never heard that phrase before, but it's hilarious.
Yeah. Hilarious, eh? But I love that scene. The bad guys are, who the F are you? I'm the Fuzz.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
the payoff to that scene is a few scenes later after the whole meth lab thing where they get the description of the killer from the Asian owner. Go ahead, give him the description. He's a big effing Wolfcop.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I rolled. But that gets us to the big action set piece, and that's the main bad guy's meth lab. There's some great stuff in that humor-wise. He grabs this guy and rips his face off and throws it. It hits the car's windshield wipers, and Willie hits him, and there's blood being smeared all over the windshield.
Yeah.
Later on, that same guy comes up without a face to Willie, and he's like, ah! And I just, that scene made me howl. I loved it.
Leading up to the meth lab scene, there's the build up to that is fantastic too. After the liquor store, Lou and Willie go out and they look at the car. I can't remember if it's Lou or Willie, but one of them says, "Do you know what I'm thinking?" And there's a garage across the road, and so they take the cop car and they remodel it and carve a W for Wolfcop in the front of it. It's got red lights coming up out of it, and the whole thing's been spray painted black, and it's got different lights than it had the first time.
Yeah, they take the light rack and they
jump in. There's heavy, yeah. There's heavy metal music playing the whole time. The Wolfcop, while he's transformed, is using like a grinder on the car. It's hilarious. And then on the way to the meth lab, Willie says, "Hey, where are we going?" Lou sticks his head out the window and sniffs, and he can smell the meth barn, so he knows where to go.
We were talking about music a little bit. The one big scene in the second act of this movie that I wanted to talk about is the love scene. And I remember the first time I watched this with my wife, she goes, "No." And I said, "Oh yeah, she's going to get it on with the werewolf."
Yeah, there's the love scene is 5 minutes of purposely uncomfortable screen time.
Yeah.
The guy knew it would be torture watching this, and he left it in anyways. Like that's just the kind of humor that you're going to find in this movie.
And what makes this scene work is the song that's playing, this Moonlight Desires.
Yeah.
Which sounds like something Hart would have done in the mid to late 80s.
Right.
Or something. It is just dead on. And it's one of those songs I'd probably put on my playlist and listen to just to laugh, as a callback to this movie, but be ashamed to tell everybody that I did.
Yeah.
That song just sets that scene up, and it's great. One thing I kind of left out of the plot is every year they do this big drink and shoot, which is hilarious to me. Everybody gets drunk and goes out in the woods and tries to hunt this mythical creature, but they canceled it this year because of the death of this councilman or whatever. But the finale of this movie, there's this big eclipse, and they're all out hunting a wolf cop, and it was all right. It was, I thought, compared to some of those earlier scenes, I thought action-wise it was probably a little bit lower on the totem pole. But it was still pretty decent.
Yeah, it's a silly movie. It's a silly action movie, but the plot's pretty good all the way through, and it feels good. The pacing's good, like you said, until the last 15 minutes, which is the big climax of the movie.
Yeah,
I think if this movie had $1 million, I'm guessing that we would have got another 15 minutes of movie, and it probably would have. The pacing probably would have felt better. But yeah, there's a lot to take in the last 15. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. And of course it ends up being him and Tina at the end that end up living and taking out these shapeshifters and stuff. We've talked about what we like about this movie. You mentioned you had a con or two. You want to delve into those real quick?
Whenever I found out that the director had basically was able to make this movie because of a contest or something happened where he came into some money where he normally wouldn't have been able to make a movie like this. So he was kind of rushed. And is this his first or second movie? Or
I've not really looked into it. I'm not sure.
I would say what it seems like to me is the first 15 minutes of the movie. And I say it's slow. It's not really slow. There's a lot of introduction. Like they introduce you to the comedy, like exactly what to expect as soon as the movie starts. Like he gets in his cop car and drives down the street. There's heavy metal music playing, and there's these radio hosts that are making bad jokes. There's like 30 seconds of that, and then he pulls up to the liquor donuts store. So you know what you're in for within the first 5 minutes of the movie. My big criticism of it, though, the first 15 minutes of the movie are really, really chopped up. It gets much better as the movie progresses, and it feels like he gets into a flow of things. And I don't know if that's because it was his first movie or a very early movie for him as a director, but the cuts are so frequent. Like there'll be cuts that are 4 or 5 seconds long in spots. it's almost like epilepsy, like trying to take it all in. If you went back and watched through a second time, it would probably be much better the first time. But it happens when you're being introduced to the main character, and I felt like because that's whenever the choppiness was happening, it just took a little bit away in the initial 15 minutes of narrative.
Yeah, I'd say about half of the first act of this movie is kind of slow, but once this movie picks up, it never lets off the gas.
Yeah, it's the first 15 minutes that I have difficulty with. Everything from where the action scenes pick up and the main plot points pick up. Like really, whenever he goes to investigate the first murder, at that point, I think it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I could call a negative. I think for what they did for $1 million, I think they did a really good job. I can't really think of any cons off the top of my head other than maybe some of that choppiness there in the beginning. So was there anything else you wanted to add about the movie?
The only other thing that I would mention about the movie is that I really enjoy the references of like the city leaders and the government of the town. You already talked about it a little bit, but them being like shape-shifting lizard people.
Yeah, that you can't trust.
Yeah, that alone is that's how half the world feels about our government. So I thought that was a fantastic addition.
Yeah, and there's a second Wolfcop, which neither one of us have seen. We'll have to check it out and see if it's Warehouse B worthy. Rating's a little bit lower than this one, but we'll definitely check it out and see. On a scale of 1 to 5, Brad, what are you rating this thing?
Man, can I give it a 0.5?
A 0.5?
What? No, like could I? Because I'd like to give it a 4.5, but I didn't know if we could do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can. We do halves. We do quarters.
Okay. Yeah, it's a 4.5 for me. If that could be re-edited, and the first 15 minutes of that film could be shot same exact scenes, but more cohesive. So there's not as many cuts. It'd be a 5 out of 5 for me on the B movie scale. I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4. I think it's really good. On my list of top movies from 2014, it's stuck somewhere in the middle between like Guardians of the Galaxy and John Wick. Somewhere in the middle there's Wolfcop.
Yeah,
one of these things isn't like the others.
Right.
But yeah, just kudos to everybody involved with this thing.
Yeah.
So guys, thanks for watching. I think coming up next for episode 37, we're talking about doing Machete with Danny Trejo, which is a fun one if you want to see a guy rappel out of a window with somebody else's entrails. Have you seen it, Brad?
I haven't seen it. No.
Yeah.
But I love Danny Trejo. So
yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So be on the lookout for that. And until next time, for Brad, this is Andrew, and we'll see you down the line on the next Warehouse B.